Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Love Show. This is Trish Wright, and I will be your only person today due to some miscommunication on my end. So I'm going to totally acknowledge that. I'll tell you all about it in a minute. And I want to just give a little sprinkle of love and wonder and just gratitude out to my co-host Dawn Light for just her being her. So let's just out there. And if you don't know, we have a YouTube channel. So I'm just going to post that in now. It's an easy way to follow this show and find all the shows that you can find. Just because we have so much content, you can find whatever show that you're looking for in whatever theme you're looking for in something that you need right now. So let me type that in. So today I just want to talk a little bit about self-empathy and some of the conversations that I've been hearing around some of the things that, I just want to clear some stuff up. So here's the YouTube channel. And so, and if you can, typing in some of your comments and questions, because it's always so much more fun to engage as a solo person teaching or sharing. It's significantly just more fun that way. So why self-empathy is critical for relating securely. And where I want to start here is, I don't believe, I do not carry the belief that you have to love yourself before you can be loved. So, and I think that all humans wake up in this body inherently worthy of love, respect, dignity, and to be able to be cared for just as is. So we wake up that way. We're born, or what I mean by wake up is that we just embody this being in that state, no matter who you are, no matter what you are doing, no matter anything. Like, if you are living currently in this planet, you are worthy of love, dignity, and respect. And in that sense, that you are worthy of being loved by whoever you choose and whoever chooses you as well, that there's the collaborative piece of love. And I also think that the learning skills and tools and techniques and leaning back into your own self is a really great way to learn how to relate better or easier, in fact. Maybe not better, but easier. So when you have some understanding of your own identity, personality, and ego, and what you're struggling with and what you're working with, and some strategies to get your own needs met on the interpersonal side, then you can actually meet another person and not take their experience personally. Does this make sense? Are you following along? So in that sense, it's what I wanted to share today is just a couple of ways to work it out. We're going to talk a little bit about self-esteem, self-confidence, self-sourcing your own needs, as well as self-empathy and why that even matters. First, I'll own that I had a pretty crazy week and wasn't very communicative with our guests this week. Communicative this week, and this is why you wind up with me. And I had a miscommunication where we're doing a pre-record with the guests next week because of childcare stuff. And I shared with Dawn, oh, hey, we're doing a pre-record. Take the week off. I did not clarify. Take next week off. So in that sense, this is why you get me today, because Dawn is doing her deep self-care, which awesome. And she needs a break, being a mom and being a full-time entrepreneur, whew, give her some time. And then there's the place of just me owning and acknowledging that I made a mistake. And if I were in the sense of like, oh, I made a mistake and I don't have the skills or the tools to actually like stay in my center there, I would probably be incredibly right now. And I have been in the past, so there's nothing wrong with that. But now I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is how it's working. How can I show up the best way that I can right now? Show up fully, completely here right now, even when everything is happening. And I'm also feeling fairly calm and centered in my body because I know I've got this. And I know you got me. And I know I've got you. So let's kind of come back to this topic. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I'm going to slow down because I'm excited and caffeinated. And I'm going to tell you how this showed up in my life for a long time. I was constantly seeking outward approval and validation. That was a big thing for me. There was a lot of seeking comfort and seeking validation for the wild human that I am from another person. I was leaning in to these people to get my needs for safety and security and being heard and seen and met. And what that often it was a lot of what often happened is that it was a lot of pressure for those people to be the validator, to be to be that stability or that pillar for me. And I forced them into a role, whether that was savior or rescuer or, something like that. There was like this definite drama triangle there. And I didn't feel like there was so much like miscenteredness or just like off balanceness that I couldn't find that groundedness within myself. For some of you who've been watching for a while, and for some of you who know me in person, you know that I have a lot of personality, we'll say it, or whatever. Like I've got a lot of just Trishness. And this, to not be able to own all of that for myself was really destabilizing for me. So again, I'm leaning in, asking for all of this time and attention. And if they didn't give it to me the way that I wanted it to, I would take it as not being loved, or I would make them the perpetrator, or I'd make them the bad guy. And I replayed this whole situation out multiple times. And we can talk about kind of where some of these things came from, like early childhood programming, being socialized as a female. Like there's, living in a capitalistic society, we can dissect some of those things if we wanted to, though it's unnecessary. But we'll go there. There's some programming that I received as a woman, as someone who is about having estrogen running body, that meant that I was always told to respect authority and to never question authority. And so I was always looking up to a man or an elder or a parent, and never questioning those pieces, never questioning if that was the right decision for me personally. And there was a lot of places where I couldn't, like, as the person that I am, it was hard for me to behave in the way that is acceptable or wanted. So, there's the behaviors that are socialized as women. So this is what you do. You show up and you look pretty and you look cute and you're slightly meek. You're kind of submissive. You're referring to the man and his wants and needs. You're a caregiver. Like I bought into all of that without ever really knowing that was something I didn't have to do. You wear cute things, you do these things. And then there was the places of, some trying to find myself in a split family where different rules for different families. One family, I could cut my hair. Another family, I couldn't. One family, I could dye my hair. Another family, I couldn't. And so it was like finding my center and my groundedness stuck between two places. Your parents have beliefs and things that they want you to do. And you don't want to do them. So you do want to do them, or you learn strategies to get safety and connection and hugs and attention, and you start building your identity as a child around that. So some of these places is where I started, is to build my strategies to get my needs met. And a lot of my strategies were strategies of people pleasing, were strategies of contorting my wants and needs for another person. And there was also this other piece that love is sacrifice. So I don't know if anybody else out there has this one, but I was taught that love is sacrifice, that I sacrifice or I contort or I bend for another person's will, because that's what people who love each other do. This is what we do for God, is that we sacrifice our lives for him. And that is what I did for a long time. And there was a lot of incongruence, or there was a lot of, it's called cognitive dissonance, where you hold two conflicting beliefs. And what happens on the inside is that it's really frictiony. I should do this, but I really want to do this. And my body and everything says this, and I'm still doing this. And some of these places are when we get caught up in relationships where we stay longer than it might feel safe or good or right to do. And this is also one of the pieces why I love teaching this specific tool. I have done many workshops and retreats and learned courses and classes and just lots of things. And it's been an amazing delayering for me, my traumas and my past, and to get me to this point. And one of the things that really helped was learning how to empathize. And I didn't know that you could learn. I thought that it was an inherent thing, that just you had it or you didn't. I even, got fired from a relationship coaching job in 2017 because I was not empathetic enough. So what was really fascinating, because I was like, oh gosh, I'll never be a coach. I'll never, be a therapist when because I don't have this empathy thing. So I set off on figuring out what that looked like. How do you learn empathy? What is empathy? And so when I'm moving towards that, as I'm moving forward, because I'm like, wow, this is kind of a big issue. I'm breaking up in a big, huge, violent breakup with a person where both of us are deeply emotionally and physically abusive, very much not gentle or kind with each other. And I feel like a big POS. And this person is sharing with me, like, why do you still continue to do these things? Why do you hurt yourself like you do? And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know why I guess in these positions. I don't know why going back for more. And is anyone else resonating with these things? Like, have you ever gone back for more when you know it's not healthy? So what I set off to do, and I got into this Gestalt program this embodied Gestalt program, which changed my life. And then I found Scott Catamas. I refound him. And he taught me, he invited me in during the pandemic to come in and to really walk with him in his course, Relationship Essentials. And what he taught me, one tool out of all of them, was just so profound. And it was the self-empathy tool. Because I didn't realize that whatever judgments that I hold inside of me is something that I will also judge another person for. And it can go both ways. So if I have a judgment externally on someone else, that it's a belief or a value that I hold deep within me as well. And as I started to unravel some of my own patterning and beliefs and understanding from the world, it occurred to me then that I was like, oh, I've been running a lot of these, well, certain programs or beliefs and impressing my beliefs onto another person. So when I get really angry, and I still get angry, everyone gets angry. It's okay to be angry. It's just what you do with it. And when I find myself angry or really upset, I kind of look back. I take a step back. I'm like, what are my wants and needs there? And what's the value that's running? What's needing to be met? And I've created these strategies that I really want to help you with. And so this is one of the foundational practices that I teach my clients because, again, we live in a society that doesn't teach us how to feel or to really access our wants and needs, to effectively communicate them, and to actually meet a lot of those for ourselves before we go to another person. Again, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that you can meet all of your wants and needs. We're human beings, and we collective community that really, this is what we need, is like the co-regulation of other bodies in a more tribal setting or in a more community setting. This is how it's been working. We just now live in an individualistic society that teaches us that separation is what we want, and that this is how you build the dream. So in this way, when we live in a society that teaches us how to, that our worth is based on productivity and the value of our bank account and the items that we've accumulated, that it starts to sort of strip us of our humanity. I'm not saying like completely animalized, but it does take us away from what's true in our bodies, our feelings, our deep longings for what we desire, what we, what really resonates with our heart. And it makes our desires and our wants wrong. And so when you make these desires for what you want, like as a bad and wrong, then we start to find ourselves as bad and wrong, right? Is this resonating? And what we find when we start to kind of flip the script is that when you start seeing yourself as whole and complete, and when you start to validate your own feelings and start to find strategies to meet your own needs, or to find strategies to regulate your own nervous system, that you start aligning to your self-center, your self-honoring choices. And you start communicating more effectively, setting clearer boundaries, and being more compassionate and clear and loving. And we don't talk about this a lot because, again, we have these programs of like, love is sacrifice, or if I don't make his lunch every day, he won't love me. Or if I'm not referring to this person's opinion, I'm not being submissive and they won't care for me or love me, or I won't get my needs met, right? So as we start to build our own resilience both embodied and emotional, it builds the spiritual resilience as well. So when I'm like, oh, like, huh, I'm really upset right now, or I'm really flustered, and I speak to myself kindly, and I speak to myself with compassion, or when I honor the fact that I'm hurting, knowing that other people are hurting probably too, that's when I start to be able to really humanize or accept the fact that I have the vast capacity of human experience, right? Um, and that might look like just something as simple as, oh wow, slowing down. Oh wow, you're hurting right now. And it starts there. Generally though, how it really shows up is that we get really fiery, like there's a feeling inside. We might have obsessive thinking. We might have crunchy feelings. We might want to talk shit about someone else. We might want to do these things that, like, I'm hurting, so I'm going to hurt someone else. Right? So the projection of pain onto another person, instead of kind of owning that whatever that person might have done or didn't do stimulated something inside of me, a want, a desire, a need, a value, something that needs to be met, right? So the ownership piece is also really important in this self-empathy piece as well. That's part of giving yourself empathy and focusing really on you. It's really interesting to have a monologue, so I hope you all are okay with it. Okay. So as I continue to practice self-empathy, and as I continue to practice self-sourcing my needs, what is happening, and I'm also teaching my clients to do that. And I also wanted to teach my clients to do that, is that the way that they're relating is from a more secure place. And what I mean by security is in the realm of attachment theory, is that they're learning their own strategies for when they get dysregulated, when their body, or they're upset. They're learning strategies to build resilience within their body. And how they're relating and how they're communicating, how they're showing up in their relationships, setting boundaries, as well as communicating their love and wants, it's becoming more effective. They're also not contorting as much, and they're seeing how they can be better at listening from a more neutral, how does Don call it? The neutral observer place. Is this all making sense? It's helpful to kind of know the distinctions here. So as you learn self-empathy, you build self-esteem. And when I'm talking about self-esteem, I'm not talking about the arrogance piece, but I'm actually talking about the piece of knowing that you can trust yourself. And this is a big piece that we lose through sort of like some challenges or some traumas, or some maybe we didn't grow up in the safest household where you couldn't trust your intuition, or when someone's telling you, yes, come closer, and you're like, okay, and then they're not showing up in the way that they've promised or that you wanted them to, and you trusted your own intuition there, and it caused pain. So we learn to mistrust ourselves, which then correlates to this mistrust in other people as well. So as we learn self-empathy, as we practice these things, we learn how to find our balance, find our center, find our core, and move from that place, right? Which also allows us to be, gosh, significantly more compassionate and loving towards other people. And it creates more inner spaciousness so that you can be like, oh, wow, this person is having this experience and they're sharing this with me. How do I stay in my center and be able to hold them more? I promised you some things. So self-empathy, self-esteem, self-sourcing, secure relating. Just, usually I have another person here to like bounce ideas off of. She keeps me pretty focused. So the piece about self-sourcing, and again, this is coming from a person who learned how to be codependent. I learned how to people please to meet my needs. I learned that external validation was what I wanted and needed. As the area that I grew up in, there's lots of ways to look at this, but that I needed a person next to me to validate my experience. And this was the programming that I received as a young girl. If I didn't have a partner, then I was worth less than a coupled person. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought that was what was true because that's what I had learned. So I was constantly thinking that my value would increase if I was next to another human, and that love was an external experience. I don't know if anyone relates to this, but this is how it lived for me. And I would lean in and I would ask for my needs to be met. That might be cuddling or emotional validation, or I was seeking safety. I don't know about you all, but I sought safety in so many people. They weren't able to give me safety because I really needed to at least cultivate a feeling of I have me, and I own me, and I honor me, and I can lean back into my beliefs, even if they're wrong, that I have a core that is me. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean, like, I'm not saying like, oh, I don't hear anybody else's opinion and I don't have an opportunity to like use beginner's mind and change, but I also know that I have me. Like I got you, girl. Got you. Like you can lean back. Whatever happens, I've got you. And so when I learned the self-empathy tool, I was able to really grasp the fact that I could cultivate skills for myself, that I could meet my own needs, or a lot of them, without the external necessity for someone else. For someone who had been depressed before, someone who felt pretty lonely in their life, this was a really powerful moment that I could not only validate my own feelings, my own experience, my own whatever I was working with, and then move from there to an action step. Because I don't know anybody else. Like, I don't know if anybody else loves action steps, but geez, like give me an action and I feel like I'm like, yes, I feel like I'm moving forward. And to take an action step to actually care for myself. And this is a good distinction, is like I have this thing that I'm like, ooh, do epic self-care. And epic self-care looks like some of these strategies. Like, how do you best take care of the body and the mind and the spirit that you inhabit? Like, how do you best care for that when you're not feeling safe or centered or grounded? What do you need in those places to really like hold your core? This was profound for me. And this is really profound for a lot of my clients, to find their core and their North Star, to find like when they get off centered, how to come back to their own regulated nervous system as much as they can and move towards something that is truly aligned with their values, truly aligned with their heart and their needs and their wants. And what this offers is more stability within themselves. It offers them security and trust and self-trust in themselves. This is why I teach the classes like cultivating self-trust, cultivating sexual self-trust, negotiating reality with another person. Like I teach relational classes because I think this is important in the world. And I also teach individual self-love classes because I also think that these multiple pieces, can we just cultivate more love in the world for everyone? And in that sense, it gives you the opportunity to stay center and be in the center with someone else's center. So it's like, oh, how can I love you in your center? How can I love me from my center? And how can that benefit the whole world? I love the triple win. It's one of my favorite things because this is here's one of my values, the triple win. Is it good for me? Is it good for you? Is it good for everyone? Is what's good for both of us good for everyone? And this kind of distinction here is also, it also is necessary to stay in one's core and center and truth so that we're not falling back into a self-abandonment, right? Because this is also very important. Self-abandonment or contorting or people-pleasing, which is a kind of a reality manipulation or a gaslighting, that will create resentment for both of you. And how that creates resentment is that if you're contorting and you're not showing up as your full expressed, like, I want this and I need this, and this person's like, I can't give that to you. And you're like, wow, they're bad at wrong for not giving it to me. Or even if they're like, oh, great, thank you for giving me all this. Of course, they're going to take it because you're giving it freely. Then it creates resentment, but it also creates mistrust between both of you. Like you can't trust yourself if you're contorting, and they can't trust your word of a yes or no because they don't know that you're not telling the truth, or you don't know that they're not telling the truth. Does this make sense? So as we start to cultivate more security within ourselves and start to cultivate these strategies for meeting our own needs before asking for an external validation, then we start building resilience. We start building a regulated nervous system. We start seeking out things that are good for us. And we also start seeking out things that are good for other people as well. And I know that this is kind of heady, and then we're going to get into the practices itself. This is just some of the foundational, like if I could teach this to everyone in the world, I think that we would all have just sweeter, more loving relationships. And I love to give this one away for free because it was so foundational for me. I've had a lot of foundational practices in my life, and this one is, I wish we could teach children this. So I'm just like tracking here. The self-sourcing piece, again, I want to just clarify that I don't think that we can meet all of our own needs. I just don't think it's realistic. We live in a world with 7.8 billion realities, and that is just the truth. We live with other people, regardless of where we live alone. Now we get to choose proximity to people, aka our boundaries. How we relate to another person is in our boundaries. Boundaries are, I'm not going to share a boundary like, you need to do this. Well, I don't have control over the other person, but what I do have control over most of the time is how I behave, how I interact, and how I react. Now, if I can't do those things, then I really need to manage my proximity to the other person, whether it's their emotional space, whether it's to their physical space or their spiritual space, and to be communicative and loving and kind about where I'm at there. So again, boundaries, when you start to self-empathize, empathize and to learn to source, and your self-esteem gets better, you're not seeking outward expression as much or outward validation as much, and you're starting to trust yourself more about what your purpose and how attuned you are or how aligned you are with your values, and your center becomes more stable, and you're able to set more clear, loving, less reactive boundaries. And so as we move into the practice now, it's very simple. And I'm going to see if I can pull up a couple tools that will help you understand what I'm talking about. Just one more second. Just 1 second. Again, I'm running it on my own, so I super appreciate your patience. So there's just a few steps, and I'm going to go through this first because I know that sometimes many of us, including myself, have a hard time distinguishing emotions. So I'm going to talk about this first. I think you all can see this. All right, so the feelings wheel. A lot of the time, we're not taught how to really distinguish our feelings. This is the Gottman Institute Feelings Wheel. And I invite you to find it online, or you can screenshot this. Maybe I'll give you a little bit better. But it is the Gottman's Feeling Wheel. And when I ask you to go into your feelings, I'm asking for you to pick the words here. These are all feelings words based on the 6 general feelings. So mad, scared, joyful, peaceful, sad. And I do invite you to actually like find the other words, like the from the center moving outward, to find some of the other words when we do this practice, right? So even now, when you're looking at it, can you pick a couple words that you feel, or a couple emotions that you feel often? And I'll give you just a moment to look. And then pick some of the feelings that you want to feel more often. Sometimes it might be, I want to feel mad because I don't know about anybody else, but I stuffed my anger for 30 years because I was terrified to be angry, because I saw anger as hurtful. I saw anger as physical. I saw anger as violence. And I didn't know that there was another way. So if you are watching and you can see this, type in a couple feelings that you'd like to have more of, or a couple of, if you're feeling courageous, feelings that you do run a lot. So I'm going to come back now, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the universal human needs. So let's say every action, generally every action that we have is, as human beings, is a strategy to get some need met or a value met. And what I mean by that is that there's an inner driver, maybe even a subconscious or an unconscious driver of our behaviors towards or away from something. Here's a real life example. One of my big drivers is that I have a desire for connection, to stay in connection. Obviously, as a people pleaser, I want to stay in connection. And so from that place, I would find my strategies to get my needs met to stay in connection was to contort. My strategies were to people please. My strategies were to make sure someone's experience was so much better than mine so that I could get connection, to stay connection and love. And part of that was deeply inauthentic and actually not true to what I wanted to do. Of course, I wanted to please them, but did I want to do some of the things that I've done? And I don't know if anyone else relates, but some aspects of it was sexual. Some aspects of it was like what I would do. Sometimes I would go out and help someone at the expense of my life. And it was really just problematic and harmful for me. So again, we're coming back to the universal wants and needs, desires, and longings. And I'm going to go through this fairly fast because we're going to see this again. But if you were driven, think about your drivers, right? So we're constantly driven by certain things. Now, take a sweet little look at these lists, this big list. Like, what is it that you deeply desire? What is a longing, or what is something that you value? So again, looking at this box right here, the primary needs for connection, safety, respect, appreciation, to be seen clearly, to be understood. And for some of these primary emotions, they're not correlated specifically, right? In the, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is, you're going to feel frustrated because you're not being seen clearly, but that often shows up that way. But this is not mutually inclusive here. So take a look at the list. What are your top values, or what do you deeply desire right now? Do you desire independence or humor or play, to be seen, for kindness, for contribution? Do you feel the deep longing to be a contribution and you just don't know how? Are you feeling the desire to be in your dignity? Do you want honesty within your relationships? Are you feeling inauthentic and you desire authenticity? Is there something more deeply foundational, like I'm needing air and food and health and touch, and I'm deeply desiring water, I'm thirsty? Am I seeking stability and trust within my body and in my life? Like, take just a moment and then stop talking. And if you want, go ahead and type them in. Okay, so now that we've had a moment to kind of look at these things, I'm going to run you through the practice. And so if you're ready, go ahead and sit back wherever you are. If you are able to sit back, if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. Please keep your eyes on the road and just listen. But if you are able to sit back in your desk or in your couch or something that you're at, I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment and pick a challenge that's up for you in your life. Don't pick the hottest one in your life, because I would hate for you not to have support on the back end of this. So pick something. Maybe even it's a conversation or a negative self-chatter in your brain right now. Maybe it's about going on, like, the guy that you went on a date with ghosted you. Or maybe she ghosted you, they ghosted you. Or maybe you're having conflict with a parent or a child or a friend or lover. Or maybe you're just feeling really lonely. But pick a thought, whatever it is that you're running right now. It might look like, here's one from a personal example. Oh, if I was a better communicator, I would have my business partner. Or I made a huge mistake. And then on this next breath, so you're only going to run that once, 15 seconds, no more than 15 seconds. and drop down from your brain into your chest. And from this point, I invite you to acknowledge feelings. And I'm going to that feelings list back up. Acknowledging what feelings are connected to that thought. For me, it might be not feeling exactly any of these words, but I feel a little silly. And I feel a little pressure. Like, I like sensation. So if you want to name a sensation in your body too, that's really helpful. I feel a little pressure in my chest right here and a little butterfly. Nervous. I feel a little nervous. And so and I invite you to actually say the feeling out loud, the emotion or sensation out loud. Say it out loud. Actually validate this for you. Wow, I feel the pressure in my chest and I feel nervous. I feel some tingles in my stomach. And then from here, I'm going to invite you to drop down into your stomach, into your solar plexus. And because these feelings are telling you something, what is under the feeling? A desire, a want, a longing, or a value that's seeking to be met. So under the feeling of nervous, of the pressure, I want to feel like my desire is to know that I'm competent and that I'm a contribution and I'm in integrity. And then I'm an effective communicator. And I add a couple little things here. It's like, oh, I'm human. Scott Catamas would say, how perfectly human. And Brene Brown might share a little bit about, hey, can you speak to yourself kindly here? Like, oh, I see that you want those things and you've made a mistake. So running the thought, coming back down into the emotion, coming into your body, what's the want, need, and desire that's up? And here's a couple questions. Can another person, or the other person, if you're thinking about something specific, can this person, are they capable, specific wording here, are they capable or willing to meet my need right now? And oftentimes, they might not be capable of holding you. And I like to take it a little further. Even if they are capable and willing, how can I meet my need for competence, integrity? What's the other one? Contribution right now. How can I come back into integrity? And this is a languaging, that doesn't make sense for a lot of people. This is a languaging that I like to use around my integrity is a way of movement. So how can I come back into my integrity? And what are those strategies? So now that you know what you want, it could be for joy, it could be any of those things on the list. What are, and I invite you, if you can right now, think about or write down, what are 3 strategies that you can do to meet your needs for connection, for joy, for competence, for integrity? And like what I'm going to do, and I've already done this already, is that I reached out to everyone involved in this and I took full responsibility and I said, this is what happened and I can own that and this is what it looks like and this is what I'll do. And this is how I won't, this is how I will choose to not do this in the future. That's coming back into integrity. And I plan on doing the things to hold my word. And I trust that I will, because I'm not making agreements that I can't. Another strategy, like what are strategies to get your needs met for connection? And I know some people are like, how do you meet that? So you've heard me say it maybe once, maybe a few hundred times, depending on how many times you watch this show, is that when I feel, if I reject, you're disconnected, I feel you not connecting or you're not connected, that place, who's feeling the disconnect? I'm feeling the disconnect. So the disconnect is literally happening within me. Though, don't get me wrong, I could be intuiting that this person is, but I'm going to take full responsibility and accountability for where I'm at. So if I'm feeling the disconnect, then what strategies am I going to build and practices that I'm going to build to lean back into my integrity, to my core, to my stability? And some of those might look like one of my strategies for personal connection is to get quiet, to journal, to do the self-empathy tool, to really seek out calming my nervous system, embodiment practices, dance, breath work, actually taking time, again, epic self-care, which looks like exercise, eating. Like there are ways that I come back into connection with my mind, my body, and my spirit that are for me. It's where I feel aligned with me and connected to me so that I know that I can choose to show up in my truth, my honest, radical truth. Radical, not brutal. Radical is that I'm still choosing to find ways to be compassionate and loving in the way that I share my little truth. And that's for me some of my strategies. What are your strategies? Reach out after the show. I would love to hear more of your strategies for connection and belonging. Because a lot of the time we have the stories that we don't belong. And maybe a strategy for belonging is to reach out to another person. Right? So this is where we start to learn how to self-source. And when we start to be able to lean back into our own resources or our own sourcing, then we get to lean back and we say, okay, I'm feeling destabilized right now. I really want this person's attention. And how can I honor myself? Again, self-honoring choices. I think I mentioned it a little earlier. Self-honoring choices are those that are in alignment with my value. So my words, my thoughts, my words, and my actions are in alignment, are congruent with how I'm actually moving in the world. So what are my self-honoring choices? This does not mean that I'm selfish or choosing to behave in a manner that's not what I said I was going to do, or I'm not communicating about those things. Like I'm actually like, oh, I know I said this and I can't do that, but I can do this later. And, there's a way to stay in integrity and change your mind. So finding these ways to find connection with self, finding the ways to find stability within self and cultivate your life in self-honoring choices with consideration of others. So again, I'm just going to run the strategy again, or run the tool again. The self-empathy tool is running the thought, the judgment, the negative, even the happy feelings. Like I do this all the time. I do this with all the feelings, everything that's coming up. I'm like, oh, let's just practice this. Run the thought for no more than 15 seconds. Drop into your chest, vocally, verbally acknowledge the sensations that are happening inside of your body as well as the emotions. Dropping into your chest, or into your chest, into your solar plexus. What are the wants, desires, needs, and values that are surfacing these feelings and thoughts? Again, it runs the ways, right? And then from there, even if another person can meet these needs for me, how can I meet these needs for myself before I ask for the validation or to get them met from another person? And what also happens when you start practicing this, it's a phenomenon, is that you expand your capacity for understanding what someone wants and needs. And now, in fact, I don't ever come to a partner and say, that thing you did, it made me murmur. I just cut all of the interpersonal like head drama out, and I say, I really am longing for connection. I'm longing for connection. My value for safety is up. And this is what I've done. I've taken a bath. I've listened to the meditation that centers and calms me. I've also written down some of the things that I want. I've held myself, I've exercised. And when you lean back, it was really like I felt really scared and sad. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can find connection together from this. And see, and it's that place that we take out the drama of the argument, or the he said, she said, or the they said, and we start to actually cultivate this connection place from our wants, needs, and values. And we get to share and validate our feelings without the heady drama, which also expands your capacity for compassion for another person. Because when you can hold your own self in like, oh gosh, you're angry again. I see that you're angry because your need for safety wasn't met or to be heard. It's very common to get angry or frustrated when you're not heard. I see you. That you get to start communicating differently with yourself, which gives you this opportunity to communicate differently for another person. It starts to dissolve some of the judgments that we project. Do you see it? Do you see how that happens? Where do I want to go from here? So again, it's just a practice that I like to teach all of my people. This is the foundational, like, especially because I literally work with codependents and people pleasers. This is my people. And to help them find their center and their groundedness and their deep longings and desires, and how to hold their boundaries, how to teach them how to have boundaries without feeling like an asshole. And in that space is like, I'm the desire is to have a community of people practicing these tools so that we can communicate with love and compassion, and to be honestly coming to our self-esteem without arrogance. So thank you all for showing up and sharing this moment of self-empathy, and learning how this can be a tool for secure relating, how this can create a balance of understanding and compassion and empathy for each other, and curiosity, leaning in to, I wonder how this person's feelings, or what's under the thought process that really makes them so angry or so sad or run away. Like, how can I hold more space for myself and for others? So if you have any questions about this, please reach out. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook at Trish Wright Loves. You can find me on Instagram at Libralicious, Libraliscius. You can also reach out to me on my website at Trish Wright Global or TrishWrightLoves.com. And again, we have a YouTube page, which it's just significantly easier to find what you want to teach on, or you want to learn on. Like, maybe it's self-empathy, and maybe it's the domestic violence class, or maybe it's the ADHD class that we're having next week, or, like, there's a lot of things that you can just, what else do I want to tell you? I just really appreciate you showing up, even though it's just me. Go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube and our Facebook page, because this really helps us out. This really helps us grow, and it messes with the algorithm so that other people, like your friends or your family, or maybe even people you don't know and you still want to love them, it helps them find us. So if you love the show, engage with it a little bit. So that we can have a little bit more, love and light in the world. Love and light. Love, light, compassion, and full expression, where we can hold each other in our deep humanness, where we can hold each other in our full, complete, rawr, and not become afraid. So I am going to type in my website. So find Trish. If you have any questions about my work as a codependency coach, please reach out as well. Going through the websites is easier and more effective. There you go. I'd like to give a big shout out to Sign Network and Scott Catamas, Love Coach Academy, and Global Peace Tribe for really supporting us, investing in us, sharing their love and their wisdom and their mentorship, because without them, we wouldn't be here. Come on next week. We have an amazing show with a woman named Candon, and it's going to be on ADHD, some strategies to help work it out there. And love you all. Have a wonderful week.